The capture. Alex Carter leaned back in his pilot's chair, stretching his arms as his small spacecraft glided through the dark void of space. The stars outside twinkled like tiny lanterns, endless and silent. It had been a long journey, 3 weeks alone in the vast emptiness, mapping the distant sector of the galaxy for the exploration court. He sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "Another quiet day," he muttered. He checked his navigation system, making sure his course was clear. Everything looked normal. Then, without warning, alarms blared inside the cockpit. Red warning lights flashed, and his ship jerked violently to the side. What the hell? Alex grabbed the controls, trying to steady the ship, but it was no use. Something unseen had locked onto him, pulling him off course. His monitors flickered, showing strange symbols. An unknown language scrolling across the screen. A powerful force gripped his vessel, dragging it toward an unseen location. No planets or stations were in range. Mayday. This is Captain Alex Carter of the UES Pathfinder. I'm being pulled by an unknown force, requesting immediate assistance. He shouted into the comms. Silence. Then, through the static, a deep, guttural voice growled in a language he didn't understand. Alex's heart pounded. He reached for his emergency weapons system, but before he could activate it, his entire ship shook violently. A deafening thud echoed through the hull, followed by another. Something was boarding his ship. Grabbing his sidearm, he sprang to his feet, positioning himself near the cockpit entrance. His breath was steady, but his mind raced. He had encountered pirates before, but this felt different. This was organized, calculated. The door to the cockpit burst open with a loud crash. 4 massive figures stormed in, each towering over Alex by at least 2 feet. Their armor was dark, heavy, and battle-scarred. Glowing blue eyes pierced through their horned helmets. Their reptilian skin shimmered under the dim emergency lights. Alien warriors. Alex raised his gun. Stay back. One of them, the largest of the group, tilted his head slightly before stepping forward. His scarred face was partially hidden by his helmet, but his glowing eyes locked onto Alex's weapon. Without hesitation, the warrior swung his massive arm. Alex barely had time to react before his gun was knocked from his hands, sent flying across the room. He moved fast, throwing a punch at the nearest alien's face. His fist connected, but it was like hitting a solid wall. Pain shot through his knuckles. The warrior didn't even flinch. A heavy hand grabbed Alex by the throat, lifting him off the ground as if he weighed nothing. He struggled, kicking and clawing, but the grip was unbreakable. The leader of the warriors leaned in close. His breath was hot and smelled of metal and fire. He muttered something in his deep, guttural voice, then turned to his soldiers. Alex gasped as the grip on his throat loosened slightly. He could breathe, but he wasn't free. 2 of the warriors stepped forward, binding his wrists with thick metallic cuffs. He thrashed, trying to break free, but the cuffs were stronger than steel. The leader studied him for a moment, then, without warning, bowed his head. Alex froze. The other warriors followed, lowering their heads in what looked like respect. Confusion swirled in his mind. They had attacked him, overpowered him, and now they were bowing. The leader straightened up and muttered something again, his voice firm and commanding. One of the soldiers pressed a device on his wrist, and suddenly, Alex felt a strange tingling sensation inside his head. A moment later, he heard words. "Do not resist, human." Alex's eyes widened. The words were in English, but the warrior's lips hadn't moved. Some kind of translation technology. "Where are you taking me?" Alex demanded, his voice hoarse. The warrior didn't answer. Instead, he gestured to the others, and they began dragging Alex toward the exit of his ship. As he was pulled through the corridors, he caught a glimpse of the exterior through the viewing window. His heart nearly stopped. Outside, a colossal warship loomed in the darkness. Its black hull was covered in glowing red markings, its sheer size enough to eclipse the distant stars. This was no ordinary alien vessel. This was a battle cruiser. They weren't pirates. They weren't scavengers. They were warriors. And they had been waiting for him. As the docking doors hissed open, Alex was forced onto their ship, his fate now in the hands of the unknown. The unexpected welcome. Alex Carter's boots clanked against the cold metal floor as he was dragged through the warship's towering corridors. The air was thick with the scent of burning fuel and something metallic, like old blood on rusted steel. The alien warriors around him moved with precision, disciplined, deadly, and silent except for the occasional guttural exchange between them. His mind raced. He wasn't dead yet. That was the first good sign. But what did they want? Why had they bowed to him? His captors treated him like both a prisoner and an honored guest, a contradiction that made his skin crawl. He had faced dangers before, pirates, rogue AI, and deep space anomalies. But this was something new, something far more dangerous. The towering warrior leading the group, the one with the scared face, suddenly halted before an enormous set of double doors. The doors were unlike anything Alex had ever seen, black as obsidian with intricate golden engravings that shimmered as if alive. The warrior turned to Alex, his glowing blue eyes narrowing. "Step forward," he commanded in deep, accented English. Alex hesitated, his mind screaming at him to find a way out. But he had no weapons, no escape plan, and no idea what he was up against. The only thing he could do was play along and gather information. He stepped forward. The doors rumbled, splitting apart with a hiss of pressurized air. Beyond them was a massive chamber, easily the size of a football field. The walls were lined with colossal banners depicting strange symbols and towering statues of alien warriors in full battle armor. Hundreds, no, thousands, of warriors stood in formation, their massive bodies clad in heavy plate, their eyes glowing with the same eerie blue light. The moment Alex stepped inside, the entire room fell into a hushed silence. Then, as one, they all knelt. Alex's breath caught in his throat. What the hell was happening? A shiver crawled down his spine as he turned to the scared warrior beside him. "All right, someone better start explaining, or I swear." "You have returned," the warrior interrupted, his voice filled with something close to reverence. Alex blinked. "What?" The warrior clenched his fist over his chest, a gesture of respect. "You are the one who was promised, the one who will lead us once more." Alex's stomach twisted. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a pilot. A human. You are Calzor." The name meant nothing to him, but the way the warriors whispered it sent a chill down his spine. The kneeling soldiers looked at him like a god returned from the dead. Alex shook his head. "No, you've got the wrong guy." A low, almost amused growl rumbled from deep within the warrior's chest. "We will see." Before Alex could respond, a new figure stepped forward from the crowd. This one was different. Unlike the armored warriors, this being was robed in deep crimson, his face obscured by a metallic mask. He moved with a smooth, almost unnatural grace, as if his feet barely touched the ground. He spoke in a whisper that carried across the entire hall. "The trial of the worthy shall decide if he speaks the truth or if he is a deceiver." Alex felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon him. He had a feeling he wasn't going to like what came next. The trial begins. Before Alex could protest, 2 guards seized him by the arms and dragged him toward the center of the chamber. A circular platform rose from the floor, metallic plates shifting into place as symbols glowed beneath his feet. The scared warrior stepped beside him, speaking in a voice that carried authority. "If you are truly Calzor, then you will survive. If not, you will perish, and we will find another." Alex clenched his fists. "Yeah, that sounds fair." A deep rumble vibrated through the platform, and suddenly, the floor beneath him dropped. He fell. The wind roared in his ears as he plunged into darkness. Then, impact. He hit the ground hard, rolling to break his fall. Dust and sand exploded around him as he pushed himself up, groaning. A battle arena. The floor was smooth rock, the walls impossibly high. Glowing symbols etched into the stone pulsed with energy. High above, thousands of warriors peered down, watching in eerie silence. Then came the sound, a low guttural snarl from the shadows. Alex turned slowly. Something enormous moved in the darkness. 2 glowing eyes flickered open. No, not eyes. 3. A creature, easily 20 feet tall, emerged from the shadows. Its thick, armored hide gleamed under the faint light, muscles coiling as it stalked toward him. A mouth filled with dagger-like teeth curled into a snarl. Alex swallowed hard. A trial. He had no weapons, no armor, no plan. The only way out was to survive. As the beast roared and charged, Alex braced himself. He didn't know what these warriors wanted from him. He didn't know why they thought he was some kind of prophesied leader. But one thing was clear. If he didn't fight, he would die. The trial of the worthy. The ground trembled beneath Alex's feet as the monstrous creature advanced, each step sending ripples through the sandy battlefield. The alien beast was unlike anything he had ever seen. Massive, armored, and hungry for blood. Its 3 glowing eyes locked onto him with terrifying focus, its jagged claws dragging against the stone floor, carving deep grooves into the arena. High above, the alien warriors stood in perfect silence, watching from the towering walls of the Colosseum. Their glowing blue eyes gleamed under the eerie light of the hovering warship above. Alex could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on him like a physical force. They truly believed he was someone else, someone powerful, someone legendary. But he was just a human, a pilot, a man with no way out. The creature let out a deafening roar, snapping Alex back to the present. It lunged, its massive body moving with terrifying speed. Alex barely had time to react, rolling to the side just as a clawed limb slammed into the ground where he had been standing. Dust and debris exploded into the air. Think, damn it. He had no weapons, no armor, no backup. The only thing he had was his wits and his training. He scanned the arena. The walls were too high to climb. The floor was smooth, offering no cover, no tools, no escape. It was just him and the beast. The creature snarled, its nostrils flaring as it turned toward him once more. Alex took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. Fear wouldn't save him. He needed a strategy. The beast charged again, this time even faster. Alex sprinted toward it instead of away, throwing himself into a slide beneath its hulking frame. As he passed underneath, he spotted a weak point, an exposed patch of flesh between the armored plates near its ribs. There, that's my only shot. He scrambled to his feet just as the creature spun around, baring its fangs. Without a weapon, he had to improvise. He reached down, grabbing a fistful of sand. The monster roared and lunged once more. At the last moment, Alex threw the sand directly into its eyes. The beast howled, momentarily blinded, thrashing wildly as it stumbled backward. Alex didn't waste a second. He sprinted toward the nearest wall, leaped, and kicked off it, launching himself onto the creature's back. His hands gripped the rough ridges of its armored hide as it bucked and twisted, trying to throw him off. He climbed higher, using the ridges like handholds. The beast's roars shook the ground, but Alex didn't let go. He moved swiftly, reaching the weak spot he had seen earlier. With all his strength, he clenched his fist and drove it into the creature's exposed ribs. Once, twice. The third time, something cracked beneath his knuckles, and the beast let out a deafening, agonized screech. The warriors above erupted into wild cheers. Alex barely had time to process it before the beast collapsed onto its side, its breath ragged, its body shuddering in pain. He staggered backward, panting, covered in sweat and dust. Silence fell over the arena. Then, a slow, rhythmic sound echoed through the Colosseum. Clap, clap, clap. Alex turned to see the scared warrior, the one who had led him here, stepping forward, his massive hands clapping together in slow, deliberate applause. "You are full of surprises, human," he said, his deep voice carrying across the battlefield. Alex wiped the sweat from his brow, glaring up at him. "I don't know what the hell this is about, but I'm not who you think I am." The warrior tilted his head. "And yet, you have passed the first trial." Alex tensed. "First?" A low chuckle. "Did you think it would be that easy?" Before Alex could respond, the platform beneath him trembled once more. The ground split open, and before he could react, he was falling again. Again. "Are you kidding me?" Darkness swallowed him whole. The second trial. The mind's labyrinth. When Alex opened his eyes, he was no longer in the arena. Instead, he stood in a vast, empty void. Stars flickered around him, but there was no ground beneath his feet, no sky above, just endless darkness. A whisper drifted through the emptiness. "Who are you?" Alex turned sharply, but there was no one there. Just the voice, deep and haunting, wrapping around him like smoke. "Do you know why you are here?" He clenched his fists. "I don't even know where here is." A figure emerged from the darkness. Alex froze. It was himself, but different. The other Alex stood taller, stronger. His eyes burned with an unnatural glow, his face carved with wisdom and battle scars. His expression was cold, calculating. "You are weak," the other Alex said. His voice was a mirror of Alex's own, but layered with something more, something ancient. Alex took a step back. "This is some kind of trick." The other Alex smirked. "Is it? Or is this who you were meant to become?" The moment the words were spoken, Alex felt a surge of memories that weren't his. Flashes of war, of conquest, of him, standing atop a mountain of fallen enemies, holding a blade carved from starlight. He gasped, clutching his head as the visions overwhelmed him. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. The other Alex stepped forward. "You have two choices, Carter." He extended his hand. "Accept your destiny, or be destroyed by it." Alex's pulse pounded. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew one thing. He wasn't ready to surrender to this. Gritting his teeth, he stood his ground. "Go to hell." The other Alex smiled. "So be it." And then everything exploded into light. The battle for survival. Alex Carter's mind felt like it was being ripped apart. The explosion of light from the shadowy void blinded him, and for a brief moment, he had no sense of his body. It was like floating in a dream, weightless, disoriented, lost in an endless storm of whispers. Then suddenly, the sensation of falling slammed back into him like a sledgehammer. Thud. His body hit solid ground. Hard. Dust and sand filled his mouth as he coughed, rolling onto his back. His limbs ached, his breathing ragged. The warmth of artificial sunlight bathed his skin, and a strange scent, something like scorched earth and metal, filled his lungs. Alex groaned, blinking against the harsh light. He was no longer in the void, no longer facing the eerie reflection of himself. He was somewhere new. Slowly he pushed himself up, his muscles screaming in protest. His eyes adjusted to the surroundings, and what he saw sent a chill down his spine. A massive, desolate battlefield stretched before him, littered with wreckage, old ships, shattered weapons, broken armor. The air was thick with tension, heavy with the echoes of battles long forgotten. But the worst part, he wasn't alone. A low growl rumbled from the distance. Alex turned sharply. A group of armored warriors stood on a rocky ledge above him, their blue eyes glowing beneath battle-worn helmets. They were larger than the ones he had seen before, more brutal, more savage. And they were not kneeling this time. The scared warrior, General Vacor, stepped forward, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the ruins. Unlike before, there was no reverence in his expression. Only cold, ruthless calculation. "The time for words is over," Vacor declared, his voice echoing through the air. "You have survived the beast. You have faced the visions of the past. But a leader is not chosen by prophecy alone." His glowing eyes locked onto Alex. A leader must prove himself in battle. Alex's heartbeat thundered in his ears. No, this was not a trial. This was an execution. Vacor raised a massive gauntleted hand and gestured toward the battlefield. The warriors standing behind him stepped forward, drawing massive blades that shimmered with energy. Alex took a step back, instinct screaming at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The battlefield was enclosed by towering cliffs, jagged and impossible to climb. The only way out was through the warriors standing in front of him. Vacor's voice was firm, unyielding. "You have 5 minutes to prepare yourself." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Alex alone with his new enemies. The rules of war. Alex's mind raced. How the hell was he supposed to fight them? He had no weapons, no armor, no strategy. Just his bare hands and a lifetime of military training that suddenly felt completely useless against 7-foot-tall alien warriors bred for war. The warriors circled him like predators, their movements slow, deliberate. They were testing him, waiting for the moment to strike. Alex took a deep breath. "Think, Carter. Think." There had to be a way out of this. His eyes darted to the wreckage around him. Old weapons, broken blades, pieces of ruined armor scattered across the battlefield like remnants of a forgotten war. An idea sparked. His hand shot forward, grabbing a long metal pipe from the rubble. The weapon was crude, jagged at the edges, but it was something. The warriors didn't hesitate. The first one lunged, swinging his massive blade in a wide arc. Alex ducked, barely avoiding the deadly strike. The air whooshed past his ear as the energy blade carved through the ground, sending sparks flying. Before the warrior could recover, Alex pivoted on his heel and drove the metal pipe into the alien's gut. The warrior grunted but didn't fall. Instead, he grabbed the pipe with one hand and ripped it away like it was nothing. Alex barely had time to react before another came at him from behind. He dropped low, rolling under the second strike. 2 more warriors moved in, flanking him. This wasn't a fight. This was a hunt. Alex cursed under his breath. He needed more than just a piece of metal. He needed a real plan. The hunter becomes the hunted. Alex's mind worked at lightning speed. He scanned the wreckage again, searching for anything he could use. There, a broken suit of battle armor lay half buried in the sand. The chest plate had been shattered, but the forearm gauntlet was intact. If he could get to it, the warriors struck again. Alex twisted his body, barely dodging a strike that would have severed his arm. He dived toward the broken armor, grabbing the gauntlet and shoving his hand inside. A surge of energy coursed through his arm as the device powered up. Symbols flickered across the screen, unreadable to him, but he didn't care. The warriors charged. Alex raised his hand and fired. A blast of energy shot from the gauntlet, slamming into the nearest warrior. The force sent the massive alien sprawling backward, smoke rising from his armor. The remaining warriors hesitated, their glowing eyes narrowing. They hadn't expected this. Alex grinned, breathing hard. All right, now we're talking. The battlefield had shifted. This wasn't a hunt anymore. This was a fight. And Alex Carter had just become the most dangerous thing on it. The dark truth. The battlefield was silent for the briefest moment. Smoke curled from the barrel of the gauntlet on Alex's arm, the stunned warriors staring at him with something close to disbelief. He had turned their hunt into a fight, and for the first time, they saw him as more than a weak human. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the warriors charged. Alex barely had time to react. He fired again, but they were fast, too fast. The energy blast only clipped one of them before the others were on him. A massive fist slammed into his gut, lifting him off the ground. Pain exploded through his ribs as he crashed onto the wreckage below. The gauntlet flickered, sparks sputtering from its circuits. He'd only gotten a few shots out of it before it overloaded. Alex groaned, pushing himself up just as another warrior descended on him, blade raised. He rolled away at the last second, the sword burying itself into the ground where his head had been. Instinct took over. He grabbed a nearby shard of broken metal and jammed it into the warrior's exposed knee joint. The alien roared, stumbling backward. Then came the second hit. A boot slammed into Alex's side, sending him sprawling. He hit the dirt hard, coughing as he struggled to get back up. Blood dripped from his mouth. Vekor, the scared warrior, stepped forward, watching him with an expression of quiet amusement. "This is the limit of a human." Vekor's voice was deep, filled with quiet scorn. "Is this the leader we have been promised?" Alex clenched his fists, breathing heavily. This was impossible. He had no weapons, no armor, and no way out. And yet, they hadn't killed him. Why? A realization hit him. This wasn't just a battle. It was a test. They could have ended him easily, but they didn't. They were pushing him, forcing him to prove something, to himself, to them, to whatever belief they held about him. Alex staggered to his feet, wiping the blood from his lips. "I don't know who you think I am," he said, voice hoarse, "but I'm not going down that easily." Vekor tilted his head. "Then fight." Alex exhaled slowly. He was battered, bruised, but he had one advantage. He wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. He was fighting for answers. The breaking point. The next attack came fast. Alex dodged left, barely avoiding the warrior's blade. He had no weapons, but he didn't need one. He had experience, instinct, and endurance. The warriors were stronger than him, but they were also heavier, slower in their movements. He could use that. As another strike came down, Alex ducked and used the momentum to twist behind his attacker. Before the warrior could recover, Alex grabbed the back of his neck and drove his knee into the base of his skull. The alien stumbled, not invincible. The others hesitated just for a second, reassessing him. Alex grinned. "What? Didn't expect to fight." One of them snarled, charging. Alex sidestepped, using his smaller frame to move inside the warrior's reach. A quick elbow to the ribs, a hard stomp to the knee, and then he grabbed the warrior's blade arm, twisting, forcing the alien to drop his weapon. The moment it hit the ground, Alex snatched it up. Now he was armed. The warriors attacked at once. The next few moments were a blur of motion. Alex twisting, parrying, striking. He wasn't a master swordsman, but he didn't have to be. His strategy was simple: stay alive. Then, just as he started gaining ground, the world around him shifted. The battlefield flickered, like a glitching simulation. The sand beneath his feet turned into metal, the wreckage dissolving into nothingness. Alex froze. Suddenly, he was no longer standing in an arena. He was in a throne room. The truth revealed. The air was heavy with the scent of burning incense. The walls shimmered with gold and obsidian, engraved with symbols he couldn't understand. Tall, robed figures lined the hall, their faces hidden beneath shadowed hoods. Alex's breathing was uneven as he tried to process what had just happened. He had been fighting, bleeding, struggling, surviving, only for it to all disappear like an illusion. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. "You are not the first." Alex turned sharply. At the far end of the hall, a massive figure sat on a towering throne. Unlike the warriors he had fought, this one radiated something different: power, authority, age. His armor was ancient, decorated with battle scars, his piercing blue eyes filled with something Alex couldn't place. "Recognition. You do not remember, do you?" the figure said. Alex's pulse pounded. Remember what? The figure stood. His very presence felt suffocating, like gravity itself bent around him. You are Calzor. Alex shook his head. No, you've got the wrong guy. I'm Alex Carter, a pilot. The figure descended the steps of the throne, approaching. Names mean nothing. Identities can be lost. But a soul never forgets. A hand reached toward Alex's forehead. Suddenly, flashes, visions, a war, a kingdom lost to fire and betrayal, a warrior standing atop a battlefield, his blade raised in victory, his enemies crushed beneath his feet, a leader, a king. The memories weren't his, but they were inside him. Alex staggered backward, shaking, his breath ragged. No, this isn't real. The figure studied him carefully. You are the last of the exiled line. The blood of the forgotten king flows through your veins. Alex clenched his jaw. That's impossible. The figure's expression did not change. You can deny it, but it does not change the truth. Silence stretched between them. Finally, the figure turned, gesturing toward the warriors standing in the shadows. Prepare him. Alex tensed. For what? The figure glanced at him. For war, the impossible choice. Alex's pulse thundered in his ears as the towering figure's words echoed through the grand chamber. Prepare him. For war. The warriors in the shadows moved instantly, their heavy boots clicking against the obsidian floor. Their hands reached for him, not in hostility, but with purpose, as if they were fulfilling a destiny long foretold. Alex backed away. His mind screamed against it. This is a mistake, he said, voice tight with anger. I don't care about your prophecy. I'm not this Calzor. I'm not your leader. The ancient figure on the throne tilted his head, studying him. And yet you fight like him. You think like him. You survive like him. Alex clenched his fists. I fight because I want to live, not because I want to lead your damn war. The throne room fell into a heavy silence. The warriors remained still, watching, waiting. Finally, the figure spoke again, this time in a lower, measured tone. You believe you have a choice. Alex's jaw tightened. I do have a choice. A deep, almost amused hum rumbled from the figure's chest. Then allow me to educate you, Alex Carter. The air shifted. The grand hall flickered and vanished. Alex stumbled, blinking against the sudden darkness. Then he saw it. The truth of the past. He wasn't standing in the throne room anymore. He was floating in empty space, surrounded by a swirling storm of memories. And they were not his own. A planet stretched before him, its massive cities glowing beneath twin moons. Towering spires of gold and obsidian stood as monuments to an empire long lost to time. The people, his people, stood in proud formations, armored, disciplined, loyal. They were warriors, but they were more than that. They were a civilization, a legacy, a force that once shaped the galaxy. Then, fire. The vision shifted. Alex felt it more than he saw it. The destruction, the betrayal. An armada of dark warships descending from the skies, raining death upon the cities. The once great empire burned. And at the heart of it all, Calzor stood alone. His face was his. Alex's breath caught in his throat. But it wasn't him. It was another life, another time. Calzor fought with fury, his blade cutting through waves of enemies, his eyes burning with unyielding defiance. But it wasn't enough. The war was lost. The empire fell. And in the end, he was betrayed. A knife to the back. Blood on the throne. Darkness. The present. Alex gasped as he snapped back to reality, his knees nearly buckling beneath him. His heart pounded. His hands trembled. The figure stood before him again, his piercing eyes filled with something unreadable. This was your home, the figure said, his voice carrying the weight of time itself. These were your people. Alex shook his head, his throat dry. No, that wasn't me. That was someone else. The figure stepped closer. It was you. Alex felt it now, a deep, aching pull in his chest, a connection to something he couldn't explain. But it didn't make sense. He had been born on Earth. He had lived his entire life as Alex Carter. He was a soldier, an explorer, not some ancient warrior king from a forgotten world. He clenched his fists. Even if what you're saying is true, what do you expect me to do about it? The figure straightened. Take back what was stolen. Alex's breath caught. Reclaim your throne. A cold silence stretched between them. Alex laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. You really think I'm just going to step in and start a war for you? The figure's expression didn't change. Not for us. For yourself. Alex's fingers twitched at his sides. For myself. Something deep inside him, something ancient, stirred. The rage of a fallen king. The burden of power. Before Alex could respond, a metallic chime echoed through the chamber. A holographic display flickered to life before them, showing a vast, looming armada. Dozens of warships, hundreds of fighters, a fleet primed for invasion. And they weren't here to negotiate. They are coming, the figure said, voice calm but firm. The same enemy that once destroyed our empire has returned. Alex stared at the display, his blood running cold. You have a choice, Alex Carter. The figure gestured toward the towering war banners hanging above them. Symbols of a once great kingdom, waiting to rise again. You can leave, return to your world. Forget what you have seen. He turned, meeting Alex's gaze with steel-like intensity. Or you can stand. You can reclaim your birthright. And you can lead us into battle, not as a pawn of fate, but as a warrior of your own making. The weight of the choice pressed down on Alex's shoulders. He had spent his entire life running away from things like this, from responsibility, from power. But this wasn't just a war. This was his war. He swallowed hard, his mind screaming at him to walk away. But deep inside, he already knew the answer. Alex Carter wasn't just a survivor. He was a fighter. And if this war was coming, he was going to end it his way. He took a deep breath and looked the figure dead in the eye. When do we start? The final stand. The war drums of the past echoed in Alex Carter's chest, but he wasn't the man they thought he was. He wasn't Kelzor. He wasn't some long-lost ruler meant to reclaim a kingdom. But the galaxy didn't care. The war had already begun. As the ancient warriors around him prepared their fleets, Alex stood on the command deck of their flagship, staring at the vast armada looming beyond the void. It was real. Hundreds of warships, thousands of enemy soldiers, a force vast enough to erase this civilization from existence, just as they had done before. But this time, the past wouldn't repeat itself. Not if Alex had anything to say about it. He wasn't a king, but he was a soldier. And if they wanted a war, they were damn well going to get one. The last council. Alex turned from the massive viewing window, facing the high war council gathered before him. General Vacor stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The high priests, their crimson robes flowing, whispered among themselves. They were all waiting for him. Alex exhaled slowly. How many ships do we have? A deep mechanical voice responded. 2 battle cruisers, 20 assault frigates, less than 1,000 trained warriors. Alex's jaw tightened. They were outnumbered 10-1. In any normal battle, this was suicide. But this wasn't a normal battle. It was a fight for survival. Vacor stepped forward, his voice a low growl. We strike first. We fight with all we have. Alex shook his head. No. That's exactly what they expect. The warriors exchanged confused glances. Alex stepped toward the holographic battlefield map. His mind worked fast, his instincts kicking in. Their strength is their numbers. Their fleet is too large for a full frontal assault. He pointed to a cluster of asteroid fields just beyond the system's edge. But here, they lose that advantage. Vacor narrowed his eyes. You plan to lure them in. Alex nodded. We use the debris field to split their fleet. Force them into narrow corridors where their numbers mean nothing. A murmur spread through the council. The high priest finally spoke, his voice laced with doubt. And what if they refuse to follow? Alex smirked. They won't. They think I'm Kelzor. And the one thing they'll never pass up is a chance to kill him again. Silence. Then Vacor grinned, a sharp, wolfish thing. I like this human, he rumbled. Alex turned to the council. His voice was firm, commanding. This isn't about destiny. It's not about prophecy. His gaze swept across the room. It's about winning. His fist clenched. We make our stand here, and we end this war before it begins. The battle begins. The war horns screamed through the flagship's hull as Alex took his place on the bridge. The entire fleet moved into position, slipping between the jagged remains of long-dead planets. The enemy fleet loomed in the distance, their massive warships burning like crimson suns in the darkness. Then, just as predicted, they followed. The enemy's massive dreadnoughts pushed forward, entering the asteroid field in a tight formation. Their size made them slow, clumsy, vulnerable. Now, Alex ordered. The fleet struck. Explosions erupted through the void as the smaller, more agile warships maneuvered between the asteroids, firing precision blasts at the enemy's weakest points. 1, 2, 3 enemy warships gone. The trap was working. But then, the real battle began. The enemy's smaller attack ships swarmed in, their engines burning with deadly precision. Fighters screamed past the wreckage, unloading a hailstorm of plasma fire. One of their ships exploded under heavy fire. Alex gritted his teeth. Hold the line. Keep them in the choke point. The battle was brutal, relentless. The enemy wasn't just trying to win. They were trying to erase them. Alex moved fast, directing ships, shifting their attack formations. But no matter how hard they fought, the enemy had more. More ships, more weapons, more warriors. And then, the enemy dreadnought moved into position. A super weapon on its hull began to charge, its energy core glowing with terrifying intensity. If it fired, their entire fleet would be wiped out. Alex's mind worked at lightning speed. And then, in an instant, he knew. There was only one way to win. One final move, and it would require the ultimate risk. The final gambit. Vacor. Alex turned to the general. Can your ship get close enough to board that dreadnought? Vacor's eyes gleamed with understanding. You plan to take it from the inside. Alex nodded. If we destroy their flagship from within, their entire fleet falls apart. Vacor grinned. Now you truly sound like Kelzor. Alex ignored the comment. Let's move. The flagship surged forward, cutting through the chaos of battle. Enemy fire slammed into their shields, but they pushed on. And then, they boarded. Alex hit the ground running, Vacor and a squad of elite warriors at his side. The hulls of the dreadnought burned with red alarms as they tore through enemy soldiers. Every step was a battle. Every hallway was a war zone. But Alex kept moving. They reached the core chamber. The super weapon was minutes away from firing. Alex sprinted to the control panel, scanning for the override. I can shut it down. Buy me some time. Vacor roared in response, hurling an enemy soldier over the railing. The warriors fought like demons, holding back the flood of reinforcements. Alex worked fast, his fingers flying over the controls. The countdown ticked down. 10 seconds. He overrode the safety protocols, rerouting the energy back into the ship's reactor. 5 seconds. The alarms screamed. The dreadnought shuddered violently. 2 seconds. Alex turned. Run. The warriors bolted as the reactor detonated. They barely made it to the escape ship before the dreadnought exploded in a blinding wave of destruction. The battlefield shook. And then, the enemy fleet broke. With their flagship destroyed, their forces fell into disarray. Some ships fled, others surrendered. The war was over. The end, or the beginning. Alex stood on the bridge of their surviving warship, staring at the burning wreckage of the enemy fleet. Vacor stepped beside him. "It is done." Alex exhaled. But deep inside, he knew it wasn't. This wasn't his war, but it was his fight. The galaxy was far from safe, and something deep inside him, something ancient, whispered that this battle was only the first. Alex Carter wasn't a king. He wasn't a god. But he was ready for whatever came next.